Well, folks, welcome to this edition of the Leadership Effectiveness Council. It is my great pleasure to bring you an amazing presenter this day. Three-time Emmy Award winner Steve Lance is the Creative Director and Chief Operating Officer of PS Insights. He's been hired, and most importantly, he's been fired from some of the best and the worst advertising agencies and television networks in the business. Along the way, he's also created some of the most memorable campaigns in advertising, including he created Shark Week for the Discovery Channel and The More You Know for NBC. Steve's the co-author of 6 books on branding, marketing, and advertising, including The Little Blue Book of Advertising and The Little Blue Book of Marketing. Most importantly, I got to know Steve as somebody who worked with me. He's got an amazing sense of humor, which you need in this business. He's got an amazing insight to leadership, and he knows how to bring them all together. So it's my great pleasure. Please join me in welcoming Steve Lance.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. And a shout out and a hello to my business partner, Paul Kernett, who is the P of PS Insights. And am I just launching into this?
You can launch into it. Let me just offer everybody one more thing. We had a survey that we sent out. Not everybody got it because some of you actually registered late, but here's the survey going into the chat. And if the chat will cooperate, it will be in there momentarily. And what I'd love for you to do is to take 2 minutes while Steve starts up here. All right, let's try this one more time. I think we've got overloading the chat here. But, okay, that's first part of this. We're going to give you 8 sentences. We're going to ask you which is the best and which is the worst. And we're going to ask you to make note of that here. All right, Steve, it can only limit the amount we can give you. I'm going to give you 3 at a time.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead. Why don't you launch into it, and I'll take care of getting this up.
All right. Here we are, marketing and leadership. Subtitle or title, make your marketing match your mission. And I guess the simplest way to explain, many of you probably know what Steve Lashansky does. My partner and I do in marketing what Steve does in the C-suite, which is to get everyone aligned and in agreement and focused on what the messaging is and what they want the outcome of their marketing to be, finding the key insight and starting to manage their processes internally so they can deliver on the promise. And you got some answers up there? You know what? I have some answers from the people who responded earlier, and I will put those up.
Please post the answers in the chat. The 2 that you think are the best and the 2 that you think are the worst. Just post 2 numbers and you're all set.
You see my screen? The PowerPoint?
Yes.
I am sharing the whole screen, or no, I'm not seeing just the PowerPoint.
You're in good shape.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh, sorry.
Once we Basil, it's great to see you. Tara, Susan, Tina.
Okay, so let's go. My name is Steve Lance. I'm a partner and CEO, COO, and Creative Director of PS Insights. I introduced you to my business partner a moment ago. And I want to talk about, we're going to talk about the answers to the little quiz we just gave you. But I have 2 questions, or actually 3 questions I want to start the session with. And the first question is, how come all the branding and marketing you like isn't yours? All right, think about that for a second. Would you put your messaging and marketing and strategy up there against what you consider to be the best that there is out there, even in just your category? And the second part of that question is, if you know what's good, why isn't it coming from you? So if you had, for example, said, oh, I don't know that there's any marketing that I really like, then I'd go, okay, fine. Then just go about your business. But you say, yeah, there is some market, you are smart enough and knowledgeable enough and experienced enough to know what good marketing and branding is. So the question is, why aren't you putting it out there? And the answer that we believe, my business partners and I, is that the biggest obstacle for you getting the marketing that results that you want are your internal processes. Okay, so we'll assume question 3, did you take our creative quiz? Now, let me tell you something about the quiz and the answers we're going to show you. I'll be showing you the results of the other people who are either just joining us and filled this out beforehand, or I got Steve the other week with this. That is a trick quiz, and I will tell you why. We have done this quiz in some variation or another for almost 2,000 marketers and creative people over the years. Only 2 people in all of the time we've been doing it asked us, what do you mean by best? Everybody just dove right in and started to just look at it over, read it over, and give their answer. There was no thought to, well, I don't know, who are they talking to? What are they trying to say? Everybody dove in with their opinion. And this is an issue that we all have in marketing, is we think we know, and we go out there and we just we just give our point of view. So here are the answers. The best, this is what we've got. 2 people voted number 1, the best. 7, number 2, 2, number 3, 9, 5, 1, 7, and 8. Oh, 8 was, I only have a couple of answers for 8, so that may be a non-starter. And for the worst, now number 1 got 2 best votes and 6 worst votes. So what's going on here? How could it be both the best and the worst? And the same thing for number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, here's the joke. In a blind reading test, number 1 and number 3, always, those top 3 always come out the way they come out. One of the worst written newspapers in America is the New York Times. We all admire what it stands for. We admire their content. We admire what they're delivering. But if you just put it up there blind and say, which one is well written, you're not going to get people saying the New York Times. The one most people think is best written is the New York Post, because the New York Post writes the way you should be writing in a business level for the internet, which is 4th grade education, common denominator, clear, simple, direct. The other terribly written newspaper in America is the Washington Post. Both the Post and the Times try to get every single fact, every bit of information into the first sentence without any thought about whether they're overloading what's important, what's not important. The reason that number 4 usually wins along with the New York Post, USA Today, because newspaper people pejoratively refer to it as McPaper. It's simple, it's clear, you don't have to jump to the inside to keep reading any stories. All of the information you want is right there. So people respond to that. Wall Street Journal depends on the story. Sometimes people think it does great, sometimes not. CBS News, same thing. CBS News was the transcript of the audio portion of their news story. And the Huffington Post generally does terribly when it comes to, is it well written? But the important thing is, well written isn't the issue. And this is what we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about how this whole approval process does or doesn't get handled well, and what the price is that you're paying for it. And let me just move your pictures down below. There we go. Here we go. Oh, the last one was NPR. So again, was an audio recording, transcript of an audio recording. And design is an issue as well. We can play this with anything you want. Let's say I said to you, I want you to design a watch for my company. I want that watch to be rugged, outdoors, and unisex, and I want it to be a premium that we can offer to our customers. Now, I typed those words with those quotes into Google, and here are 4 of the results that I got. And ask yourself, would you vote A, rugged, outdoor, and unisex, B, C, D, or E, all of the above, or F, none of the above? And even if I gave you the parameters of my company, a premium for my customers, unisex, even then we would not be in any agreement. When I do this with a company with a marketing department of 20, 30 people who are all working for the same company, we don't even get agreement. Simple truth is, you can do this with anything. If I said to you, give me a name of 3 funny movies, we'd be all over the place. The simple fact is, we're all victims of our opinions. And instead of using some kind of metric, some quantifiable metric in order to measure the results that we want. We're great at doing it out there when the message gets out there. We're terrible at doing it internally before we get the work approved. So I'm going to give you all an MBA today. In fact, at the end of this workshop, I will be awarding actual MBA certificates for those of you who want one. Dennis, I see that do you have one already? Would this be added to your collection? Okay, so here's an instant MBA. This is what they teach in business school. You can't manage what you don't measure. And for the next 2 years, they do case studies of what companies managed, what companies measured, what companies didn't measure, what companies should have measured, what companies forgot to measure, what companies got blindsided because of a measurement they didn't take into account. That's what business school is all about. You can't manage what you don't measure, and you are not measuring or quantifying how you decide what your marketing message should be. So let's deconstruct the approval process for any work that gets done in marketing. It is an N, and the left arm of the N would be your ad agency, your outside vendors, or maybe your in-house creative group. And the right side of the N would be your marketing and management side of the company. So work gets created on the bottom left of the N, usually by a freelancer, because your staff people are too busy making revisions and changes to work that's already in the pipeline. They don't have time to do the new work. And that work gets shown to their direct report at the company, who shows it to the creative director, who shows it to the design director, who shows it to the design supervisor. And if it was an ad agency, not just an in-house creative group, it might even go up to the president of the ad agency. And then it goes down to the lowest person on the marketing and management side, usually the summer intern. And the summer intern shows it to the assistant product manager, who shows it to the brand manager, who shows it to the C-suite, or starts to move up into the C-suite. And eventually you get to the only real yes in the entire process. But something funny happens when you get into the C-suite. A strategy conversation breaks out. You'll be presenting work to somebody, and they'll say in the meeting, well, why are we doing this? Didn't somebody tell marketing that we're not going to be making that product again next year? Or didn't anybody tell them that we're planning to do a special sales promotion next spring? This is where the silos merge and meet, and people have information that is being withheld internally. So it's not as direct as this. Even though I've shown it as simple up the ladder, it's not really that direct. So the first person will show it to the second person, and the second person may ask for a change. We can go back to the example of 8 media sources. Let's say I wrote, my assignment was to write about the story, and I wrote the New York Times version, and the person I showed it to was a person who hated the New York Times version. Anybody want to jump in and tell me what I'm going to have to do? As in rewrite it?
Revision.
You see, revisions. The simple fact is that everybody except the top right is what we call a no body. They're a body with a no and no yes. No means you have to fix it. Yes means you can show it to my boss. So we make the revision, we show it to the next person. They show it, then they want a revision and it comes back and it goes up to the next person. And it continues to do that. It might go over to the marketing side where they ask for a revision. Or sometimes, and this one's always good, a senior marketing person will reach out to a middle level person in the company creative group or at the ad agency and ask for a change. And when they get to presenting it to the president of the company, the CMO or the creative director is going, where did that come from? They say it quietly to themselves. They don't want to embarrass themselves or anyone else. And if this is starting to look familiar, maybe I can help you a little bit, because it really is a spider's web. If you are doing more than 2 revisions to any work that's being done, you are caught in this approval process, which is about opinions and not judgment. Eric Schmidt said it perfectly. He said, all work is created by Hippos. And that was his acronym for the highest paid person's opinion. Because that's what it comes down to. Or James Barksdale used to say, if we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. At least he told the truth about he was a hippo and that's the way it was going to be. There are about 20 ways you can get this under control. We don't have time to do all of them today, but I'll give you 16 tips that you can start using immediately to start to get this under control. First thing, when you are making a presentation of any work to anybody and you are being presented to, either way, make the first question of every presentation, is this on strategy? Yes or no? Thank you to Fatma Kokon for sharing this tip with us. Very simple question. You show the work, you say to the person you're showing the work to, is this on strategy? It's all I want to know, yes or no. Now, if they say no, have a strategy conversation. Don't get into the particulars of the work. Say, okay, what do you think the strategy is that we missed or that didn't happen? Now, if they say yes, in effect, they have taken away their ability to make any comments. If they say, yes, it's on strategy, and then they say, did you think about trying it in blue? Well, the simple answer is, if it's on strategy, why does it have to be in blue? You start to point out to people what their opinion is. Now, to Steve's point, you want to do that a little more delicately than I have in the past. And my partner, Paul, can attest to that. That way, next time he introduces me, he won't say hired and fired. But, you do what you can in terms of getting people to see the way it is. And that's what my partner is really good at. It's not just understanding these strategies, but Paul is brilliant at helping companies and individuals get these kinds of strategies in place in their organization. Personal tactic number 2, and these are all, again, the personal tactics are things you can start doing today, tomorrow. Stop giving comments and criticism. When we look at work, our instinct is to have a comment, look for something that's wrong with it. To criticize it, to have a comment about it, as if that will then demonstrate that we paid attention, we know what we're doing. Well, how about changing that to compliments and coordination? How about looking at work with the expectation that you're going to like it and say, wow, this is great work. Let's figure out how we can sell this to my boss and how that person can sell it to their boss. And start talking about the coordination and the tactics in order to get it sold up the line. Personal tactic number 3, If you must criticize or comment, stay in the area of your problem, not the solution. You see, human beings are wonderful. We are so generous in our nature. And what we want to do is solve a problem. So for example, if my boss says, gee, I'm having a little trouble reading the copy in that ad, my instinct is to go back to the designers and say, hey, make the type bigger. I try to solve the problem. What I should do is I should go back to the designers and say, my boss is having a problem reading the copy in the ad, and then walk out of the room and let the people you've hired do their job. Any good designer or art director will tell you that there are 20 different ways to solve that problem of making something legible and readable. And it may not be make it bigger, but if you go in there and say, make the type bigger, they're like, what, huh, why? Bring the people that you've hired into the conversation, the people you work with, make it a partnership thing. Talk about what the problem is. And then your job should be, tell the designer your boss is having trouble reading the ad, and then you need to figure out how to say to your boss, yeah, but you're 30 years older than the target audience. The target audience will have no trouble reading the ad. A different session, a different conversation. Personal tactic number 4A and 4B, never leave anyone alone with the work. When you show the work and they say, can you leave it? You say, no, but we're more than happy to come back and present it whenever you want. And in this age of Zoom, it always makes it easier to go along with the work, any place. So if your boss is in a meeting in another part of the country and you're on deadline, you set up a meeting, you go on Zoom, and you show them the work while you're there, and while you can give them the words and the thoughts that they need to buy into what your thinking is and to sell it up the line. This is all about inclusion, process, alignment, and agreement. Personal tactic number 5, explain the process that got you here, including the dead ends. Last year, my partner and I were working on an image campaign for a sunblock, and we worked on it for weeks, and we finally made the presentation to the client. We took them through about halfway through the presentation, and then the slide in the PowerPoint in the presentation said, and then we got stuck. We took them through our thinking right up to the dead end so that they could understand what we were about to do, which was to shift the paradigm. If we had just shifted the paradigm on them without explaining why we got there, how we got there, there would never have been a sale. All of these are personal tactics you can start doing immediately. Now, here is the more philosophical question. If anybody brings you work and you're thinking to yourself, why did they bring me that? You know, this is not what I asked for. That's not a constructive thought, either for you or the person who brought it to you. So if you turn to somebody and say, this isn't what I asked for, or this isn't what I wanted, they have no place to go, you have no place to go. What you should ask yourself is, what if everybody is bringing me exactly what I asked for? Then the conversation you have is, I need to talk to you, Steve. You brought me version 3, and I thought I was going to get version number 4. And so obviously I'm not explaining what I'm looking for clearly enough that I get what I was looking for the first time around. That's a conversation in which both of you can learn something and both of you can get aligned with. Personal tactic number 6A, and just for your own benefit, start keeping a record of your own changes. So if you're a person who has to approve work and you're seeing work, every time you see something, make a note about whether or not you have to change it or you make a change. Start being your own monitor of how much you're meddling or diving into the work, so that you can start to look at it and say, wait a minute, how much time am I burning here, my own and other people's, with my comments? Which brings me to the personal tactic number 7. Before you say anything, thank you, George Shaver, ask yourself, am I making it better or am I making it different? Which is better, kittens or puppies? Which is better, apples or oranges? It's a non-question. So just because they didn't solve the problem the way you wanted it to be solved doesn't mean it's wrong. You could look at those 8 examples that we gave you of that one news story and say, did we get the information right? Putting aside your opinion about what is well written, are the facts there? Is the information correct? Is it in the right order? Have we emphasized what's important? Those things are quantifiable and a little more universal than well written. Now, if you really want to, and you want to start, if you want to start managing up a lost art, one of the things you can do, we use, ask yourself, what's the value of my changes? Before you change anything, one of the tools that we use is a meeting cost aggregator. There are 3 apps off the top that I know of: meeting cost timer, meeting abacus. You can download it to your phone. And what you can do on these apps is you can enter the name and your guesstimated annual salary of everybody that you work with. And when you go into a meeting, you open the app, you check the box of who is in the meeting, and you hit start. And at the end of the meeting, you hit stop and you look at that, and it will tell you exactly how much that meeting cost your organization. Then you have to multiply that by 6, because the rule of thumb is every dollar of internal costs has to be offset by $6 in retail sales or total sales. So ask yourself, if I had a meeting that cost $500, did we just generate at least $3,000 in new sales coming out of that meeting? And if you didn't, then you have to ask yourself as a manager, why did we have that meeting? Now let's move up into the team tactics. One of the things you can do as an organization is make comments, not changes, until everyone has given their input. This is what PDF was designed for. In other words, you mark it up however you want to mark it up, and then it goes up to the next person and they add their comments, and the next person and they add their comments. And it might be that as you go up and down and up the end, somebody will say, well, why did somebody ask for that change? That's silly. We don't need to make that change. And they'll delete that comment. Finally, when everyone right up to the yes has given their input, it goes back one time to the creators. They make all of the changes that are requested, and then it gets shown again only for proofreading purposes. No more changes allowed. Yes, it's a little tough. Boy, do human beings want to meddle. Now, the other thing about using a PDF is you can't get rid of your fingerprints. See, one of the clever things that we all do in the marketing approval process is we tell somebody that we want to change, they make the change, we go into the meeting, our boss says, who did this? And we throw them under the bus. We said, oh, that person did it. There's no, well, they did something different, but we asked for some changes. Nobody owns that. They're able to wipe their fingerprints off the crime scene. But with PDF, you can't do it. It's right there. And one of the people we were presenting to made a great suggestion. Before making changes, or comments, ask yourself, is this going to be an improvement? Make an improvement, not changes, until everyone has given their input. Again, think about not whether it is quote unquote the best or quote unquote your style. Ask yourself, is it on strategy? Is it delivering the message? Team tactic number 10, send the original along with the revise all the way. And don't label them. Don't tell the person you're presenting to which of the two is the original. Just show them both. Several things will happen. The people who created the work originally will love you forever. If they know that you are going to show what they thought was the right solution all the way up to the C-suite, all the way up to the Hippo, they will make any change that you want. And along the way, you can start to, again, you can't manage what you don't measure. So you will be able to start tracking what's happening. Are the senior people approving the revision? Are the senior people approving the original? And if the senior people are approving the original more often than not, the people who've been making changes will back off. And if they're approving the one that gets revised, the people who are doing the original work will learn what gets sold. So they'll begin to understand the best way to create work that will get approved in the process. Now, a lot of times, organizations have no idea this is going on because this has all been pasted together. Over the years, the senior salespeople have gotten a look at all of the marketing work before the marketing work goes out, and the lines of communication are all over the place. A lot of times companies don't know that this spider web is in place. So one of the ways you can do that is, we know a designer in Silicon Valley who does this, is send every revision along as they accumulate. And eventually you'll get to somebody who will say, why am I looking at 8 versions of this ad? And that person who's showing that work is going to have to say, well, you see, because there were 8 requested changes along the way. And chances are a smart manager will say, that's nuts. Stop it. Simple way to get it under control. Team tactic, department tactic. Now we move up from your team to the whole department. Department chargeback fees for each requested change. So, or Ashley, if you come to Paul and you say, can you make this change? Paul says, sure, fine, no problem. Happy to change that word for you. That'll cost you $1,250. For the department, it'll cost your department $1,250. And you go, what? To change one word? And what Paul will say is, well, we have looked at the cost of revisions, and over the course of a year, the average revision costs us $1,250. So we are charging a flat fee for all revisions. And then when the budget year comes around, the company can't complain because the money stayed within the company. But when your department goes to do your budget next year, your boss is going to say, wait a minute, why did we transfer $250,000 to the creative group? And the person's going to have to say, well, they charged us for revisions. And if you want to keep the money in your department, you'll stop with the revisions. Now, the other thing that you need to do in that process is the people creating the work need to keep track not just of the time they spent creating the work, but the time they spent doing revisions. You can't manage what you don't measure. So you need to be tracking how much of your time is being spent doing the revisions. And I guarantee you, within every company that we've ever worked in, the amount of time and money being spent on revisions will cover all of the freelancers that you are paying outside of the company because you're running out of time internally. Company tactics, number 13. Deadlines, respond or lose your vote. There is always somebody in that end process who says, oh, I'll look at that ad. I'm going to Tokyo for a conference. When I get back next Tuesday, I'll take a look. As if somehow what they have to do and their time and their schedule is more important than your time, your schedule, and your deadlines. So if you can't, whether you're trying to set up a meeting because you're now going to go along with the work, or if you can't go along with the work and you have to send the work, in your cover note, you say, in order to meet our deadlines, we need to have your approval by Friday, June 4th, or maybe Monday instead of Tuesday, Monday the 6th. We need your approval by Monday. And if we do not hear from you, we will proceed apace. As politely as possible, you say, if you don't get back in time, you lose your vote. And that turns you into, instead of a boss, it turns you into a coach. Best example I had about that, my mentor at NBC, George Shaver, he was president of the Network Advertising Promotion Department. And George would say to me, I need to see all the work that's being done. You know, I need to look at it. I said, George, sometimes the deadlines are impossible. You're not around. And he said to me, okay. He took out a red folder. He put the folder on his inbox and he wrote my name on the folder. He said, every day you put any work that has to be approved in that folder. The next morning at 9 a.m., give me at least 24 hours. The next morning at 9 a.m., you can take that folder off my desk. If I've made a comment, you'll see it. If I didn't make a comment, I lost my vote. That's a great manager and a great boss. And every once in a while, not that often, but occasionally he'd walk by my office and he'd say, where did that Bridgeport ad come from? And I would say to him, well, we were under deadline and the president of the network wanted it and you were in Los Angeles at an upfront meeting. And George would just nod and he'd say, you know, I wouldn't have done Bridgeport, I would have done Baltimore. And move on. Coaching. Not bossing, not micromanaging. And by the way, I'll give you a little tip. Earlier, when I showed the example of the tip about, are you making it better or are you making it different? One of our rules of thumb is micromanagers will always tell you they're making it better every time. It can be a good indication of what kind of boss you are or what kind of boss you're reporting to. Helps you to manage the process. Company tactic number 14. If you really get up to a certain level, what you can start to do is remove those people who have a no and no yes. Say, you know what, if I'm giving them no authority, why am I giving them any responsibility? And if you are giving them responsibility, say, can I give them the authority, like George did with me at NBC? Either they have the yes or get them out of the process. Don't slow the process down and add more opinions to the mix. Company tactic 15, this came from a legend in our business, the real Peggy Olson, Jane Moss. What Jane would do is she created a checklist, an evaluation form. She had one for the creative brief. She had one for the creative work. And there would be 10 questions, and you could get 2 points if the answer was yes to each of the 10 questions, like, is this on strategy? Yes, a little, or no. So in theory, all the work could get a maximum of 20. And you agree as an organization, 16 and a half is good enough. Nobody's going to hit 400, 200 every time. So you agree on what the number is and you tally these up. You give these sheets to the people that are looking at the work and reviewing the work, and you have them fill it out as they do it. Then keep these sheets. Start to aggregate them so that you can look at them, put all these numbers on an Excel sheet or Google Docs, and then add Google number, and then ask yourself in a few months, who's giving us 12s? You know, is there one person who's consistently giving the work 12 and 13 while everyone else is giving it 18 and 19? It helps you to identify where the hiccup is in the process. This is for the more advanced case. This is from an engineer in Los Angeles who said, don't do 210, use a multiplier. But that's for the advanced workshop and those of you who are advanced mathematicians. Finally, for this particular talk, the single change that can solve all of these issues in 2 weeks or less, and it has to come from the CEO of the company, and all the CEO has to do is make the following statement. We call it the nuclear option, and it's very simple. If it's not in the original brief, it's not open for discussion. So when you show the work to somebody and says, oh, I forgot to tell you that we have to put in our URL of our website, you say, was that in the brief? Wasn't in the brief, we're not making that change. Or whatever it may be, for about 2 weeks, everybody will hate you, and then the organization will get on track. It's a painful, painful way to do the more elegant first example I gave you, which is this on strategy, yes or no? So that's another way that you can do this. Now, where do you go from this? If you get this process in place, if you start to wrangle the approvals and the opinions and the yeses and the revises, you get that under control, you will start to get good work sold easier. Once you do that, you'll save money, at least on freelance costs, if not more. Also, you'll be saving the time and you'll be saving the soul of the people who are grinding out the work, save time with less friction, which is a self-sustaining process that will lead to good work sold easier. It really becomes an upwardly spiraling story of, we made the change, we did this fix, now it's easier, we can move on to the next problem. My partner, Paul, is a true believer in the place where the time, one of the ways you can understand if you have this problem in your organization is if you look at a work schedule and the approval time is longer than the creative time. That's absolute proof you have this problem in your organization. The place that the time should be put in is in creating. You need to give the agency or the in-house group time to think about the problem rather than rush something out so that 20 people can put their rubber stamp on it or make their little notes in the margin. So if your approval schedule is longer than your creative schedule, you have this disease in your company and it can be rooted out. And the place for you to start is, take that quiz that we just gave you or ask a harmless question like, what's your favorite movie? And use their answer to segue into this question of subjectivity. You say, really? You think that Dumb and Dumber is the funniest movie ever made? Okay, well, what about? And that lets you get into the conversation and then get them to ally with you so that you can start to bring the entire organization in line. The other thing you can do probably is just hire Steve Lashansky because Optimize International, because that's what he does. He will kick ass, take names, and get everybody in shape in 2 days. Now, the final thing I wanted to say is I did promise you that we would be issuing MBAs. So I thank you all for putting up with me and attending. And our MBA is a very special one. It stands for the Mastery of Bogus Approvals. And if you would like yours, please reach out to Steve or to me and tell us how you want your name spelled on your MBA and where to send it to, and we will get them out on 100% authentically imitation vellum paper and get them to you so that you can frame it and have it over your desk to remind people that you have an MBA. So I thank you. I invite you to hook up with me on LinkedIn. I am not a C-suite member. I am unfortunately or fortunately not a joiner, but happy to connect with everybody on LinkedIn or reach out to us on our website. Steve, thank you.
Well, listen, thank you, Stephen.